So what is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to a brand new dedicated DCU discussion series video. And this one in particular was quite needed, especially after James Gunn's announcement of the Man of Tomorrow movie, which is featuring Lex Luthor in that war suit with Superman and quite a few other characters, and on top of that, there's questions, and there's questions to those questions, so we need to dive into the DCU and what's to come. More importantly, after whatever I ramble about, I want to know your thoughts on my thoughts, your theories on what's to come with the DCU. If you go on to like this video, I'd greatly appreciate if you hit the like button, maybe hit the hype button as well. There's a new hype feature for some of you available, and of course, subscribe for more DC videos just like this. But before we get right into all of that, first a quick word from this video's sponsor, FanHome. Ladies, gentlemen, fellow Gothamites out there, we are back with another collection from FanHome. A few of their models which I've showcased on the channel before, but this time, I mean, I'm a very happy Boba to say the least, because they've sent me the first couple of issues of the Batman 1989 Batmobile model. So if you don't know already, FanHome are very well known for their large freaking catalog of fantastic collectible models. And with this subscription, you can build your very own faithful replica of the 1989 Batmobile from Tim Burton's Batman. And as you can tell from just me building the initial stages here, this thing is massive, as when fully assembled, it boasts a huge, highly detailed model, 75 centimeters in length. And just from the footage you can see here, that the stages get pretty intricate, like when I fitted the two belts here for the pulley system that attaches to the front of the iconic Batmobile's hood. And this was just the very beginning stages. And the materials the FanHome build utilizes are also high quality die-cast metal and ABS components, which just brings me to the other features you'll build along the way, such as we can see here is the side wings that extend from the Batmobile. The roof is retractable, which highlights the Batmobile's high detailed dashboard, and it of course also has a host of the Batmobile's gadgets, such as the retractable machine guns, the grappling hook, and the disc launcher. It has control activated LED and sound effects, and more. So each package you receive also comes with a magazine that of course offers a detailed assembly guide for each issue's parts that are very straightforward and easy to follow. And in addition to this, you just get a bunch of content that dives into the secrets behind the Batman films of Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher, as well as you get further into it, Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, and even Matt Reeves's The Batman, as well as highlights of Batman's best stories, which focuses on his greatest adventures and enemies, and even highlights the artists and writers behind those featured tales. And so with all of that being said, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow Gothamites, if you're a big Batman fan, and I know many of you here are, and perhaps, you know, maybe you've considered at points what it'd be like to try your hand at building a high detailed model that you actually assembled yourself, then click on the link in the top of the description of this video. Also, I've left it in the top pinned comment of the comment section, and start collecting your very own 1989 Batman model today. Now, don't forget to use my personal code during checkout just to help support the channel. And also just a really big thank you to FanHome for sponsoring this video and continuing to work with me on the channel. But let's now get right back into the video. So first up here from J. Jonah Jameson 6765, he says, Man of Tomorrow will come out after Clayface, after Supergirl, after Lanterns, and will come out very close to Batman the Brave and the Bold. It makes you wonder who else might be in the movie. With how close it is to Batman Brave and the Bold, it could even tease that movie. Sorry for the long comment. Also love your videos, Boba. Keep it up. Thank you very much, man. But also, we have another comment here, kind of related, from Brody Walker 216 saying, Hey, Boba, do you think that this will be the movie? that introduces the DCU Batman. Like, he could be a cameo or in the very end in some shape or form. I just think that would be super cool. So this is something that is on my mind, and actually, for those of you who have been watching my videos for quite some time now, the question of Batman appearing in the DCU hasn't really been as simple as, okay, I'm just going to say we're going to wait until The Brave and the Bold, which would be at earliest a 2028 release. Now, I say all of this quite simply because when James Gunn first, sat away, locked himself and Peter Safran in a little room, writing and mapping out the first 10 projects they was going to announce in January of 2023 of Gods and Monsters, one of those being Brave and the Bold, he also thought, as he outlined in that video, that, there's Elseworlds with the Batman and the Batman Part 2, that the Batman Part 2 was coming out sooner. It had an earlier release date, and so maybe he thought that Brave and the Bold ideally would release sooner, right? Sooner than 2028, but the way things look right now is that he and DC Studios, Peter Safran, are giving Matt Reeves the room to simply release The Batman Part 2 in October of 2027. It looks like it's all smooth sailing there. We know the script is done, and it'll be entering production in the spring of 2026. And, he's already talked about how we're not going to have two Batman movies to that extent, like Brave and the Bold and The Batman Part 2 releasing in the same calendar year. So, I don't see how, considering Brave and the Bold is still being written and James Gunn is working closely with whoever that mysterious writer is, maybe co-written by James Gunn. I've seen the theories out there. That's not going to release, like, next year. So basically, without going down into that rabbit hole too far, it's at 2028 at the earliest, right? So maybe because things have changed and we're waiting for the Brave and the Bold, like a Batman in the DCU in his own debut movie for quite a few years, he might have reevaluated things to such an extent to be like, okay, the question is now, do we include Batman and cast Batman in the DCU to appear before his own movie? Now, once upon a time, to all of those of you who are like, oh, no, they're not going to do that, I thought the exact same thing. But now, like, can you really tell me with 110% confidence that they haven't considered, okay, if we're not doing the merger thing, if we are going to let Matt Reeves' The Batman Part 2 release first, and we're going to develop all of these other, don't get me wrong, they've got lots of other DC Studios, DCU projects to develop in the meantime. I am willing to bet that they have considered including Batman in the project only if organically appearing before the Brave and the Bold. So, one of those would be, I guess, Clayface, but another one would perhaps be Man of Tomorrow. Now, from the comment that I read out, we don't strictly have a release date for Brave and the Bold. It's just, from what I've just explained, 2028, sometime in 2028 would be the earliest it would come out. But the question still is, are you going to include Batman in Man of Tomorrow when this movie is seemingly going to include more characters than just Lex Luthor and Superman? I mean, we've had teasers of Isabella Merced, who plays Hawkgirl, saying, see you soon. We had Aaron Pierre's John Stewart. Well, Aaron Pierre replies saying, yes, indeed, among other actors that I'm sure you can count on being in there from, frickin' Nathan Fillion, Guy Gardner, most likely Metamorph, basically the Justice Gang, but even more, because we've had Nexus Point News tease that we could get Supergirl, which, I think is a no-brainer as well. Her movie, her arc in Supergirl, that's coming out next summer, would have been done and dusted. She would have grown as a character, if you're familiar with that Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow comic book story. There's more. There's apparently Lobo. There's apparently even Peacemaker. So will Batman appear? I've been talking about this a bit on live streams recently, and I don't feel comfortable enough to, bet a large chunk of money. Like, if I was at the DC Studios casino and I had to place a fat bet, I don't know if I'd do it, but instead of, walking away from the table, now I'm kind of I feel like they might do something here. Are we really going to wait? We have waited since, Superman, technically the first live-action movie. Now, 2025, 2026, all of 2027, and then God knows when in 2028, maybe, to get Brave and the Bold at the earliest, before we even see a Batman in the DCU. And you're telling me that we're having a threat in Man of Tomorrow, to some degree, that is going to bring Lex Luthor, equipped in a war suit, to, ally himself with Superman and all of these other characters to go up again. And you have Batman in Gotham just being like, "Yo, Alfred, yeah, you got tabs on all those Justice Gang characters, Superman and, Luthor as well, yeah." It's like, "Sir, are you not going to help them out?" "Oh, no, Alfred, no, maybe, what year is it?" "No, I've still got a couple of years, at least, maybe 2028, Alfred. That's when I'll maybe talk to these guys about we need to get a team going, maybe something called, they're called the Justice Gang. Maybe we're going to be a Justice League, but, I need to have my own movie." Are we really? Is that really what he's going to do? I just find that kind of hard to believe. We have Bruce Wayne, and in a fantastical universe, more so than ever, more so than kind of recent adaptations that we've had, even with the Batman, that's his kind of own little thing. A Bruce Wayne in a fantastical universe where there's already a Justice Gang. There's already Hal Jordan, who's been a Lantern legend for God knows how many years already, like 15, 20 years when he got the ring for the first time. Is he really just going to sit back? I mean, I'm not saying, by the way, before I get too far ahead of myself here, because I often get very carried away, that he is going to be gliding around the place and he's going to be talking to every character every minute of the movie. That's not what I'm saying. But do I think that they would consider having Batman involved, even if in a minimal way, where whatever was going on, but he, like, at some point, maybe even towards the end, it's kind of like, okay, this threat was a pretty big threat. I see that you've got a team already. I've got an idea. Let me tell you about my idea for a team. I don't know. I know I keep going round in circles here, but are we really, ladies and gentlemen, let me know, are we really going to wait till Brave and the Bold until we have a Bruce Wayne in the DCU? Once upon a time, I would have said yes. But to me, it would feel weird. They would have to write something, even if they wrote something as to why Batman didn't get involved, it would just feel weird that Bruce is out there. He already apparently has a Bat family of some size built up. He's obviously, as a result of that, had some experience, quite some experience, as the vigilante Dark Knight of Gotham. And he's just going to leave all of this to the recently released Bell Reeve, Lex Luthor, Superman, Guy Gardner. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of heroes who should be able to handle themselves, but it just feels odd to me. I think that he should appear, even if as just Bruce Wayne, he's been watching these heroes with great interest. Maybe during the events of this movie, they were more than capable of handling themselves, but Bruce was there with a contingency either way, and because of these growing threats, these larger things, maybe that's his in the movie towards the end. Maybe Superman already knows Batman, but like towards the end of the movie, there's a conversation where Corin Sweat's Clark speaks to Bruce Wayne, is like, "Oh, I know you were doing this, Bruce, but like this is getting serious." And he's like, "I know, Clark." And it's like, oh, that kind of thing at the bare minimum, surely. But I need to know your thoughts on this. Maybe some of you will be like, "Nope, they're not going to do anything until at least 2028. If you think that, let me know what you think they could do as to why, knowing that Bruce has quite a few years of experience already, albeit he's still most likely a prime Batman, like 35, 36 potentially. What do you think they could do as to why he wouldn't be in Man of Tomorrow, even if like in a 2-minute role? Or are you on the train of, yeah, they're probably gonna, they've adjusted their plans, and since Brave and the Bold's gonna take a little while longer yet, because of the Batman 2 and stuff, they might find an organic way that isn't, just cameos for cameo's sake of putting Batman in Man of Tomorrow. Up next from Crosswired Crafts, they say, "This could have the potential to be a heartbreaking story with the team-up, actually. Maybe Superman starts to feel like he's finally getting through to Luthor, and in the last moment gets betrayed again. It could be a really fascinating test of Supes' speech at the end of the first movie, that even Luthor can be good, something like the end of All-Star Lex's story, except he makes the wrong choice and refuses to admit it." Then we have another comment here from Jim MC saying, "Luthor blew a civilian's brains out to torture Superman. I will never see him as any kind of anti-hero in some buddy cop comedy." So this is exactly what I think they're gonna do. Obviously, I could be wrong, but truly, yes, I think Man of Tomorrow, evidently Lex Luthor and Superman are teaming up. Sure, there might be a bit of butting heads at the beginning, maybe Lex is against Superman, maybe Superman bests him, but like, something grounds them to the point of where, okay, we really reluctantly need to work together. And maybe, all while I don't think this will convince everyone, but for a lot of the audience, they'll kind of really love to hate Luthor. There'll even be some moments where, yes, even adhering to Superman's speech, like the comment mentioned here, where he says, "And someday I hope, for the sake of the world, you'll understand that it's yours too." And that, humanity is his greatest strength, like Superman. And obviously the movie's meaning is a double meaning. Man of Tomorrow, yes, is a Superman somewhat title, but also in the movie, Lex was absolutely striving to be the Man of Tomorrow. We all know that's one of the reasons why Lex resented Superman, because the kind of title of Man of Tomorrow was so easily inherited by Superman because of his gifts and powers, whereas Luthor has worked for it, yada, yada, yada. So the Man of Tomorrow aspect is both of them. We might begin to almost believe, maybe not some of us, but maybe a lot of people will be like, okay, Luthor did a pretty cool moment and maybe even did a little side smile to one of the characters, like, well, damn, is he changed? But then, at the end, and this is a bit cliche, I know, I'm sure it'll be much more cleverly written than this, and again, this is hypothetically assuming that I am anywhere near the truth of what Gunn could be writing for the story, but let's just carry on here. At the end, or somewhere towards the end of the movie, Luthor is still up to no good. Absolutely up to no good. Whether he betrays Superman and that is, out in the open and he gets away with it and he's like out there somewhere, or if despite everything the movie achieves, that where they first butt heads and it makes you kind of feel like, okay, well, they've butt heads, but now they've united together and now like surely he's not going to turn his back or like do something diabolically evil, but still, no, he does. He does at the end, and it sets up the much longer arc for Luthor, and that's something I want more than anything. I don't think Luthor should be redeemed after, yes, literally executing that poor guy, point blank shooting him in the head in his dimension, holding hundreds of people in those freaking glass boxes, splitting Metropolis into two. Like, my God, I don't know about that. But yes, try and fool the audience that maybe he's got some kind of redemptive quality, redeeming qualities. But I need to keep hammering it in. I think there's going to be something at the end which will be like, you actually are an evil, calculating bastard. And maybe it's unbeknownst to Superman and everything like that. Maybe he's going down the Legion of Doom route. Maybe, I was even talking on my stream recently about what if, despite all of that, something happens to Luthor which enrages him. So like maybe Argus, Frank Grillo's Rick Flag Sr., despite, let's just say, promising him this immunity deal, shoves it, like spits it right back in his face. After everything Luthor helped achieve in that movie, helping all the heroes save the day, that will boil up in a resentment in him that would be unmatched. Maybe it's not that, but do you see what I'm trying to get to? I still think something will happen towards the third act where maybe it will seem to be going the right direction, and this heads him down the path of initiating a group like the Legion of Doom for all-out frickin' war, but long-term sneaky Luthor, where he doesn't hide away from his more evil side. And I think, again, Lex Luthor is Lex Luthor. I think they should make us empathize a bit with the character, which is what I mean by whatever Gunn does and peppers in there to make us kind of question, I don't know, throughout the movie, for then like that betrayal to sting like even more, or to kind of see Luthor feel hurt. Maybe he's hurt by something. I don't know what it will be, because there's a few variations clearly of what they can do. But I still think no matter what, he should still go back and regress into the person that we know the character is. But I let me know what you think here as well, guys. I'm dying to your thoughts. Do you really want Luthor to go down a redemptive arc? I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know. Maybe, I know some people argue the presidential storyline, like maybe after the events of this movie, maybe Clark still thinks what Crosswired Crafts was saying here, maybe there's something teed up there, even if half of us don't believe it, and we're like, nope, Luthor's not really changing. He's got his immunity deal in place so long as he did what he said he would do. Now he's out of Belle Reve. There's stuff when we get into the whole president storyline, I'm like, okay, I think I would rather lean towards the Legion of Doom option instead. That's more of a believable one, rather than him actually running for president and like he's got diabolical plans there. Now, Ben21 S6C says, how can Luthor team up with Superman? No, he was sent to Belle Reve. Is there maybe a connection to Amanda Waller, or how can he do this team up? I think it's kind of what I was just getting into. Like, no matter whatever it is that this threat is, they're going to Luthor and they need him. Whether, we know he's a genius. We know that just through him literally creating this interdimensional portal. We've heard that Peacemaker Season 2 ties directly into Man of Tomorrow in some way, shape, or form. And I've wondered, maybe, I don't know if there's something that goes wrong with the QUC, the Quantum Unfolding Chamber, which opens up that space to 99 other universes through dimensional portals. I have no idea what happens at the end of Peacemaker, but again, on my stream the other day, shout out to you guys who were in the stream, we were starting to wonder, also when looking at the season trailer for Peacemaker Season 2, which teased some other things, what if something is awakened threat-wise through the portals in Peacemaker? I'm not saying it should be another bloody dimensional portal threat in Man of Tomorrow, like the kind of dimensional portal black hole was in Superman to some extent, but maybe, again, random idea here, what if the dimensional portal situation in Peacemaker Season 2 towards the final episodes sends out kind of a beacon, a signal from our Earth into outer space that conjures up Brainiac or Mongol Warworld and something like that. I was getting down this line of theory talking, crafting, if you will, and I don't think we should have a threat come through the Peacemaker QUC portals because, it's like, I'd rather something come from our universe rather than something come over through a portal from Peacemaker towards the finale. And that's when they go to Luthor in one of the final scenes of Peacemaker Season 2 being like, we need you. No, I'd rather maybe something crazy happen that sends out, if any of you have seen the 3-body problem on Netflix, basically, us sending out signals out there and maybe to the marital system in Peacemaker, these dimensional discrepancies being picked up on that radar. Maybe it goes far beyond Earth and it catches the attention of people who might want to park up and maybe invade it. I could be off, but no matter what it is, I guess I should just jump to the point here. They're going to need Luthor, and when you need a prisoner to do something like that, well, they can be like, well, I want full immunity. So again, after the events of Man of Tomorrow, Luthor, no matter what I was covering earlier, he can be released to the public with full immunity because of the deal he struck to help out, because they rely on him. They need him for some reason to help out with the events of Man of Tomorrow. He could strike up a deal there, which is how he gets out of Belle Reve. But no matter what, after all of that, he could be a free man, but a free man with a diabolical plan, even after everything that he did during Man of Tomorrow to help out save the day. So Brickety1447 says, why do you think Luthor and Superman would have to team up here? What threat is big enough to cause that, in your opinion? Well, that is the big question, right? I don't want to pretend oh yeah, I know what they're gonna do. I know. No, I don't. I really don't. Is it Brainiac? Is it someone Mongol from Warworld? I think those are cool threats. I know they're the two I keep saying, but it's hey, Brainiac is really formidable. He can come to Earth and he can invade it. And it's what are we going to do? Mongol, Warworld, that is also an epic size thing in of itself. But then again, there's lots of other kind of contenders in terms of the big bads out there in the lore of DC. But I think those two are the most popular for now, or at least Brainiac most certainly is, what the majority of people are thinking. And so clearly it's going to be a big threat. Not only do you have Luthor in that war suit, which, Superman's holding the screwdriver, which to me is implying that he helps him construct that or something like that. You could have all of these other characters from Supergirl, Peacemaker potentially, John Stewart, after the events of Lanterns. The list goes on. And then, new characters can be introduced. This feels like an ensemble movie, even if the co-leads are Nicholas Hoult and David Corenswet reprising their roles as Lex Luthor and Superman. But I go back to what I was talking about a second ago, that why still go to Luthor? Why get his help? Why not just rely on the Justice Gang, maybe new implemented characters, John Stewart, Supergirl? Well, surely that's a formidable force in of itself. Well, it's because whatever this is, I know I'm bringing it up again, they require Luthor's help. And what do we know about Luthor? Even beyond the dimensional stuff, it's just that he's insanely smart. And he might know just a way around whatever they're doing. He might be able to help kind of figure it out. He might be able to help understand why this could be happening a week, something like that. And ultimately, that is just going to you're going to have, who's the next person who would help out? That would be Superman. So these two are going to have to work together, which is why I understand the kind of desire to do a movie like this from James Gunn, even if, let's just say, this isn't the next movie you wanted to see. Like, if there is a story to be told where you need Luthor's brains or knowledge about a certain something, and then, of course, you're going to have the Man of Steel in there anyway, and then, of course, you're going to have the Justice Gang help out, especially if it's a big enough threat, that does make sense for a story. But right now, the more we're learning, as I sometimes say, the more questions we actually have. So, like, who really is the villain? Is it Brainiac? Really? Is it Brainiac, though? Or is it something else entirely? Now, speaking of all the characters, we have Cole Underhill 6537 say, so many Chocos teasers in the DCU so far. What are the odds a Martian could be one of the many definitions for Man of Tomorrow? I've seen many people say this, like, could we get Martian Manhunter in this movie? I think I want to lean towards something like it being likely, just because in addition to characters that we do know, I don't know if I want to include Aaron Pierre there, because it's like, well, we will know him from Lanterns, and now it's kind of likely he's going to be in Man of Tomorrow, but also, Hawkgirl, Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific, and Metamorpho. I do think people like Martian Manhunter have a good chance of being introduced in this movie as well, but that's just one more character, and we were talking about Bruce Wayne earlier, but that doesn't mean Bruce Wayne's going to have, 50 minutes of screen time. It could be very small in the ways I was diving into, but then you have other characters you could introduce who could help deal with this threat. But you know what kind of talk is going to come with that, and that is, oh man, how many characters are they going to stuff into this movie kind of thing? But I think this could be a movie that owns that more than ever with regards to it actually being a team-up film. Yes, you have co-leads, as I said, but that doesn't mean you can't pepper in quite a somewhat eventy kind of film with other characters being out, like, which was one of the reasons as to why the Justice Gang were in Superman. Like, it's a living, breathing DCU with characters having rich histories, like Hal Jordan to many, many other characters out there. Of course, in an event like this, where you have Luthor and Superman and other heroes teaming up against this big threat, you might pepper in a couple of others in there, especially as I went over earlier, when you're getting into like a precursor for an eventual Justice League. I'm not saying this is the actual penultimate movie before we get the actual official Justice League, but we're still paving, the way to something like that. So what comes with paving the way? Well, that would be maybe introducing more characters. Now, Jon Stewart is such a natural one. Obviously, with him being a rookie under the mentorship of the Lantern legend Hal Jordan in Lanterns itself, that's going to be quite an adventure for him. And I think he will be dispatched over during the events of Man of Tomorrow, where it's like, why wouldn't you have Jon Stewart help out? Now, I don't know what happens to Hal Jordan and why he wouldn't be in Man of Tomorrow. Maybe he will, but maybe he won't for one reason or another, because of what could go down in Lanterns. But yes, it is too kind of hard to speculate what other characters could show up in Man of Tomorrow, because we've already got, like, if I go over the list, Lex Luthor, Superman, Peacemaker is rumored, Lobo is rumored, Supergirl is rumored. We've got Hawkgirl, potentially, most likely, Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific, probably Metamorpho. That's 9 already. And did I even say Aaron Pierre in that, like Jon Stewart? Maybe I did. But, like, there could be more, like Martian Manhunter. That's 10 already. So there has to be quite a bit of care taken with how to tell a story that could potentially whoosh a lot of characters in there. I do think a lot of people tend to overreact about that in general, though. Just like through what James Gunn has said before, he said something that I kind of agree with regards to, there's tons of movies out there which have large supporting casts. And I know I've said something like this before when talking about Superman, but in terms of a movie like this, which has probably more of an excuse to have other characters in it, it still remains true what Gunn said with how, even with larger films with much larger supporting casts, people don't really bat an eyelid being like, oh my god, there's too many characters in there, oh my god, how are they gonna... It's just in comic book movies, because they have capes and they can fly and they can use powers, people seem to add more of a weight onto them being a part of the supporting cast, where they don't really tackle that in something as random as Oppenheimer, or like insert said movie here where there's a supporting cast. But, I think when you see supporting cast of oh, a character that has his own story in the comics, like Guy Gardner. And then another character who has his own story in the comics, or their own story in the comics, Hawkgirl. And then the list goes on with Mr. Terrific to whoever else. Do you see what I mean? Supergirl. And it's like, well, you can't do that. But again, it's interesting, isn't it? The lens is that they're comic book characters. And I'm not saying it's the perfect explanation. I'm just saying that they can be supporting characters where you don't have to give them a massive subplot with 25 minutes of screen time per character in the movie. Now, I understand if a certain character like Hawkgirl is your favorite character and you wish you kind of saw a few more minutes of exploration there. I get that, but again, when it comes to other movies out there, most of the time people wouldn't really raise that complaint because, hey, this is the story of the movie. These are all side characters. And I feel like they are ingredients that make up the cake of the film or the story that's being told. And in the future of the DCU, I think we can have different slices of cake for those different characters. But they help tell the story, especially, again, most importantly, in a movie like this, or the events that happen to make a movie like this in a DCU where it's already flourishing with metahuman history. Unless you make it like Zack Snyder's Justice League length movie, you're just not going to be able to cover every single character out there to that extent that you may want. And I don't think you also have to, like, read some comic books where there's a big story happening, but not every single character in the comic book panels in an event that requires, like, Wonder Woman to Guy Gardner to Mr. Terrific to Martian Manhunter to Mr. Miracle or whoever pops up. They're not all leaned upon with their own, oh, this is what Mr. Miracle is feeling in this moment, and he went back home and did this, and, like, you know, that's not always leaned upon. So I don't know. I find it a bit frustrating. I'm not saying it's completely invalid, but I feel like, you know, I went on a bit of a tangent there, but that is going to be 1000% something that comes out of most likely the amount of characters that could be added to this movie. Whereas for me, I'm quite happy that we could just get new characters from the DCU that are probably already out there actually showing up to help out and, you know, further develop the connective tissues of the DCU that will hopefully lead to, you know, a more Justice League Unlimited feeling kind of sense of things one day. Now, I find what Matthew Rogers said here pretty damn fascinating because there are certain things that I think have already been seeded in the DCU that I feel hasn't been presented as an overarching kind of, hey, you need to pay attention to this is the main story of the DCU, but it's certainly something bubbling, something on the simmering kind of build-up where I feel like it's going to have a payoff at some point. So Matthew Rogers says, Boba, if this new threat that Supes and Lex will face ends up not being Brainiac, do you think it could be the Authority? For some reason, when people ask Gunn for the Authority info, he refuses to say that it's completely cancelled. And in one of his latest podcasts, I Think You're Overthinking It, when he mentions the new DC slate, he said some projects might have changed a little bit and specified that one of those projects was the Authority. And I also listened to that, and yes, that's exactly what he said. He didn't say, not happening. He was like, you know, it's changed a little bit. So do you think Gunn could have recycled the ideas from that movie into the Man of Tomorrow's script the same way he did with The Engineer and Superman? I think what relates to what Matthew Rogers is saying here could maybe be what I've talked about before with the metahuman tensions that are rising in the DCU. In Superman, there was a little bit of a commentary there under the surface of that, which they really reminded you of again at the end of the movie. Was it like in the Pentagon where you had Rick Flag Sr. there and he was watching the news and you had that other guy there at the Pentagon in that kind of room where basically they were talking about metahumans are calling the shots now. And then in Peacemaker Season 2, there's a scene that they're continuing along with this thread. And you have Flag Sr., the head of Argus, you know, an important guy now in the DCU. And I think he's going to recur in quite a lot of projects. And he sat there like kind of holding his face as he's watching this news report. And they're talking about how experts are like talking about how this metahuman crisis needs to be looked into even more, and it's becoming an existential threat, and there's a response happening, or there needs to be a response. You know, that kind of line of thinking and talking and commentary is still going on in the DCU. Now, to me, that ties perfectly into a group like the Authority. Again, I'm not saying this is the Authority, but I feel like some kind of something is cooking up here. I've always said that this, ties into the whole reverse kingdom come theory that I've had for a long time, which remains to be true in the sense of the parameters that Gunn created with the DC universe, where we've picked up at this point in the timeline, is reverse Kingdom Come-esque, or should I say Kingdom Come-esque? I say reverse because Superman's not older, but the state of things in the universe are like, this place is rampant with metahumans. Gunn, as he says himself, there's more of them today than there used to be. They're more of a problem today than they used to be. There's a deliberate focus on how they're more of a problem today than they used to be. And yeah, maybe Gunn could have recycled some ideas there of the Authority. There could even be some like truly like self-policing force like the Authority, where they're not necessarily heroes, but they're not villains, as we know, but they're doing something in the events of Man of Tomorrow. However, I don't know why Luthor would tie into that, other than his connection with the Engineer. And I doubt between Superman and Man of Tomorrow, the Engineer's like started off a whole other group where they're like going around basically being like, well, this is how things are done, you better, and maybe they're killing people. I don't know. But the reason why I wanted to entertain this, even though I don't feel confident about it, and maybe it probably is more likely a threat like Brainiac or whatever else, is that they are threading this story along with the metahuman unrest, the existential thread, and how something needs to be done because it's getting to a boiling point. Like the kettle is kind of boiling now, and I wonder what's going to happen there. So we've got a few questions here from Louis QY8GW saying, 1, if the duo wins against the threat in Man of Tomorrow, do you think the public opinion will turn on Lex to become president? Well, we kind of already covered that earlier. I don't know about that. I mean, never say never because of it being this fictional universe, but I still don't know about that one. I would like to know what you guys think about that specifically. Number 2, which threat will it be? Brainiac or something else closer to the big bad of Chapter 1? For now, I do feel like if I had to just play it safe, I would kind of maybe say Brainiac. We already know that Gunn's admitted that he did explore ideas for Brainiac for Superman. So you could argue that it's like, okay, well, I know why I didn't do that because I'm going to kind of use him in the next one. That doesn't guarantee that he's, reused his idea for Brainiac and parked it for the next movie in the Superman saga being Man of Tomorrow, but I think there's a decent chance of that. Number 3, will there be any change in David's costume? I think this is mainly what I wanted to get to this comment because, yes, this is something to be talked about. I just want to ask you guys, do you think there will be suit changes straight away, like this soon after? I'm going to kind of go against the grain here and be like, I don't think there will be any dramatic changes. I think the House of L symbol will be exactly the same. I think the best you could hope for is tweaks, like minor tweaks with the suit. So a good example of that would be perhaps how you guys remember seeing Supergirl at the end of Superman. Her belt and her skirt there and her boots are actually quite different from the Supergirl suit that we saw on the poster that you're probably seeing on screen right now, where they did just simply change it. They tweaked it, in my opinion, for the better. I think Superman will basically look the same, but maybe the boots will be a little bit different. Maybe they might make the belt go from like yellow the way it is to more of a gilded color, but maybe not. Maybe they won't. Maybe there could be a different coating on it. Maybe the texture of the suit, even though it may still have the collar, and I'm a fan of the collar. I don't care what anyone says. I'm just gonna say it. I see all the fan edits with no lines, no collar. I'm just like, I see what you're saying, but I still don't think that looks really that much better. Maybe take away a couple lines, but hey, this is going to start a big war. But yes, mostly the same. Maybe the texture on the actual suit, like which some people call the basketball texture, that could change. Maybe they might remove a line, or maybe they might make the lines thinner around the thicker area on his collarbone there. That kind of thing. But if you were kind of to quickly glance at both photos side by side of the Superman 2025 suit and the Man of Tomorrow 2027 suit, I think it would just be subtle. And number 4, I'm imagining all of this Kryptonian shenanigans will not fly past Batman. What's he gonna do? Exactly. I, at this point, find it weird to imagine Batman not being kind of used in some way, even if it's like small but significant in a scene or two, where as if he's just going to sit back and be like, okay, this happened in Superman. Oh, like now there's potentially an even larger threat to the bloody planet, potentially, which is involving all of these heroes. And I know I'm saying the same thing, but like, really? We're just going to wait until Brave and the Bold? I'm not really buying that anymore. Up next from the Dork Knight 13 saying, Gunn said we will see Superman before Man of Tomorrow. What do you think are the projects most likely to feature Superman out of the ones we know about so far? Well, I think in Supergirl, it wouldn't surprise me if, even though this is her movie, her story, if at the beginning you kind of have a little bit of a monologue from Kara, like maybe it does pick up with her in space drinking in that kind of taverny situation she's in the comic, celebrating her 21st birthday. But I still feel like there's going to be a bit of like a kind of poppy like monologue thing from Kara, like, hey, not like it's cheesy, this is my story, but it will kind of do a little kind of, hey, this is who I am, my cousin's Superman, but I'm like in his shadow kind of thing. But like you might have him feature that way, or you might have Kara once again saying, I'm going off planet cuz, and you see a new scene filmed with Clark. Maybe it's at the Kent farm, maybe it is in the fortress, but I think it will be very small. Or you could say at the very end of the movie, when she's come back to Earth, you could have Kara filling Clark in, and Superman Clark saying that he's proud of her. Like, just something super simple in concept like that. But there are other projects, right? So I do think that Superman could appear in Peacemaker Season 2. I feel like a lot of us are confident that Luthor will, because we know from one of the trailers that Rick Flag Sr. said, like, oh, I'm going to Belle Reeve. Now, I'm personally hoping for, like, a Creature Commandos wing, like Project M wing to cameo. And do you remember how in the G.I. Robot episode when he was going in, we saw Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man? There's potential for so many Easter eggs there. Before I get too ahead of myself here, I'm just saying that would be pretty cool, but I don't want to get my expectations up for that. But if he's going to Belle Reeve, it's probably for Luthor, although I would love a Creature Commandos member in live action, even if just for an Easter egg. That'd be pretty damn sick if they did that. I'm pretty sure they could do King Shark very easily. But anyway, getting to it, it's probably Luthor. But with Rick Flag, like, if there is like a final scene that ties directly into Man of Tomorrow, as Gunn said, maybe have Rick Flag seeing Luthor maybe again at the very end of the show. And I can imagine the camera being from, like, picture this in your head. The shot is from inside the cell. Luthor's face is kind of facing the camera. And you see the cell door at the back of the shot. And he can hear that the door's about to be being opened up. Maybe whoever's being buzzed in. And Luthor's like, what do you want now, Flag? And he turns around because there's no response. And Superman walks in. Like, maybe Flag's there as well, but Luthor would have been told that he's got a visitor over the comms and that Flag Sr. is going to see him again. And it's like, okay, he is there, but the first person to walk in is somebody he didn't know who accompanied Flag Sr. I'm not saying that's perfect. I'm just saying something like that is something I can imagine. And it's like, okay, well, basically this is kind of what we already knew. They're going to team up, but like, it's cool seeing it now. And it's like, what is that? What does he need help with? What are they facing? How else really is Peacemaker Season 2 going to connect to Man of Tomorrow? I feel like they're going to have to be like going to Luthor to be ambiguously saying, we are requesting some kind of assistance from you for whatever else, but we're going to be super ambiguous with the lines because we don't want to give too much about Man of Tomorrow away. There are two ways they can do that. Have Flag go to Luthor and Belle Reeve, but also maybe have Superman go to Luthor and Belle Reeve with Flag. That just makes the most sense. But hey, if you've got any other ideas, let me know, but let me know what you thought of my rough pitch kind of idea there. And that's all we really have time for today, guys. I know there's probably a lot more of you who sent in questions, and I will hopefully get to that in future videos, but I feel like I've waffled on enough about all of that to the point of where I just want to hear what you guys think. What did you think of some of the other comments that people sent in, but also my responses to them? Did any of my theories awaken a new theory that I didn't consider? You know the gist here. I read every comment, so I will try and reply to as many as I can. Can't reply to them all, but absolutely buzzing to see what ideas this has stirred within the DCU community we have here. If you're still watching right now, guys, you know what I'm going to say. We'd just greatly appreciate a like. Consider subscribing for more videos like this. Again, another massive shout out to Fan Home for sponsoring the video. Make sure you check out the link in the top pinned comment or the description to start building your very own 1989 Batmobile today. But until next time, I'm going to love you and leave you. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.